Hi, I'm Kelvin Dickinson with the Paul Rudolph Institute of Modern Architecture here in New York City, and you are listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm Tom Guile. Today, you'll hear from the principal architects of Architecture Research Office, also known as ARO, Adam Yarinsky, Stephen Cassell, and Kim Yao. We'll explore a 12,000 square foot modernist house in Dallas with architect Kevin Alter. And we'll wrap up with musical guest Carrie Marshall. And now, your host, Mr. Modernism, George Smart.
Hey, thanks, Tom. Our architect guests today, they've made it. They're doing quite well. But for every architect doing quite well, there are three that could do a lot better, especially in small practices. Architects in small practices spend years honing their craft, creating ethereal visions of steel and glass, only to then do little to promote themselves. Guess what they don't teach in architecture school? Sales and marketing. In fact, design school professors drill into students that if you have to promote your work, your designs must not be any good. Buildings should speak for themselves. A soaring atrium needs no Instagram filter. A cantilevered balcony requires no appearances at cocktail parties. If it's good, they proclaim, with the air of Frank Lloyd Wright, clients will come. This, of course, is utter bullshit. Architects know this deep down, but they have made ironclad excuses. When things are great and there's lots of work, they have no time to do the marketing. And when things are terrible and they need the work, they have no money to do the marketing. These architects, bless their hearts, toil away, hanging on dearly to wild swings of cash flow, and they are still aghast at the suggestion of networking with potential clients. They'd much rather go to conferences with other architects and spend thousands on immaculately designed websites that are impenetrable to mere mortals, where trying to find the phone number is like getting out of an escape room. If your practice is in this feast and famine pattern, consider this a fishing problem. Where are you going to catch the most fish? In a beautiful lake or in a bait shop full of fishermen? Fisher professionals.
Okay.
Hanging out with architects is like going to the bait store. Where are tomorrow's buyers of architecture going? What organizations do they belong to? Who are their friends? What socials do they scroll? Where do they eat? The next time you find yourself too busy to think about marketing for clients you'll need a year from now, when the work runs out, start fishing where the fish are. I'm so sorry to be Mr. Cranky Pants here, but I hear this story of not enough work from so many architects, all of whom can't or won't stop fishing at the bait store. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle, Square, Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger, and by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs.
Architecture Research Office, or ARO, was founded in 1993. This 40-person architecture firm has won over 100 awards, including the 2020 Firm Award by the National AIA, the AIA New York State Firm of the Year, and the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt National Design Award for Architecture. Their work is even in museums, including the Museum of Modern Art, the Art Institute of Chicago, and Cooper Hewitt. Their new book, Architecture Research Office, features 30 of ARO's most significant projects. ARO partner Stephen Cassell graduated from Princeton.
Go Tigers.
And Harvard.
Go Crimson.
And he currently teaches at MIT and Columbia.
Go Ivy League.
He's a huge fan of the Brewster Whitecaps. George?
Yes.
In the Cape Cod Baseball League. This team plays in the league's East Division, and their home games are at Stony Brook Elementary School in Brewster. Welcome, Stephen.
Well, thanks for having me.
ARO partner Adam Yarinsky met Stephen Cassell when they were both working for Stephen Hall. Adam graduated from Princeton College.
Again, go Tigers.
Thank you. And has taught at the University of Michigan, UVA, Harvard, and Princeton. Wanting to be an architect since he was 6 years old, Adam was on the Bethlehem Central High School ski team.
Go Eagles.
And it's been downhill ever since. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Kim Yao, ARO partner Kim Yao, has degrees from Columbia.
Go Lions.
And Princeton.
There are a lot of Princeton grads here.
Yeah, she has taught at Columbia, Parsons, and MIT, and was awarded the AIA New York Medal of Honor and the Beverly Willis Foundation Mentorship Award. She was president of AIA New York and now serves on the board of the Center for Architecture, which is a place everyone should visit. According to our deep research back at Lake Ridge High School, Kim had a great knack for getting teachers off track when the classes got boring. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Well, Kim, let's start with you. What's the best way to derail a boring teacher?
I tried to remember. Probably asking a really hard question, George. That might be the one way would be derail by distraction and making them think harder and perform harder. Perhaps that's it.
We found that in a cute newspaper article about you from your high school era.
I'm really impressed.
So, Stephen and Adam, I'm going to ask you to split this question. Stephen, you get 4. Adam, you get 3. What are the 7 guiding principles featured in your book? Go.
Strategize for maximum impact. Approach architecture as a social act. Engage the complexity of context. Elevate the ordinary. Adam?
Design for use and experience, work with integrity, and always be learning.
Okay.
Those are great. It's kind of like the Scout Pledge, I think.
Yeah. Be trustworthy,
loyal,
wise,
helpful,
reverent.
Yep.
Brave, clean, and reverent.
I had it tattooed on my arm. That's why I had to pull my sleeve up. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So what motivated you all to establish ARO, and how has the firm's mission evolved into these 7 principles? So who wants to take that one?
Well,
Founding, you guys do it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, what motivated us? Well, one, the economy, because I needed a job. So it's always good to start a firm to get
exactly.
going. But, Adam and I had worked together. And actually, we did go to school at Princeton together. So we knew each other then. And we knew we had shared approach to architecture. And when we were both at Stephen Hall Architects, we learned so much there, and there were so many things we liked about that office and how it approached it, and the other things we thought we would do differently. And it gave us an opportunity to test that out on the one tiny project we started with.
And Adam, what was the one tiny project?
Wow, I'm trying to remember which one. Well, it was a apartment renovation. Is that the one you're referring to,
I was thinking it started with a lobby.
Oh, the lobby. So it was the lobby of a building that we were renovating in Soho. Yeah, and that was actually before we had a physical office in the city, but I was working remotely and was teaching at UVA at the time. And that was the first we began to use CAD then too, in a very basic way compared to
on a Mac, right?
Yeah,
MiniCAD.
yes, exactly. MiniCAD. That's right.
Wasn't AutoCAD.
That's right.
And Kim, you came along a few years later.
That's right, George.
How did you meet these guys? Was that through Princeton too?
It kind of was. I had a friend from, we didn't overlap, but I had a friend from Princeton who now turns out to be my husband who said, oh, you should check out this
What
firm.
a coincidence.
Yeah, how convenient.
He's like, you should check out these guys. They have a really nice practice and they do good work. And I applied and I started as a temporary hire, 2-week temporary hire. And then a couple weeks into it, my other job didn't end up panning out. And so I stayed and I just have continued to stay. So that was in 97. So about 4 years after Adam and Stephen founded the practice. And I became a partner probably around 15 years ago, something like that.
Now, I notice you guys do, of course, all kinds of buildings, but we here really love some of the houses. And I wanted to know, what was your first house commission?
First one was in Telluride, Colorado. And it was just an inspiring site up on a mesa around 20 minutes outside of Telluride for just a lovely family who loved being in the outdoors and being with each other and having communal spaces. And then also told us that they all drove each other crazy. So all the bedrooms had to be far apart so they could get along for long holidays and vacations.
That's the kind of information that architects
Really need.
Yeah, they treasure that information, but it's also usually maybe not something that everybody else needs to know about.
Exactly. Well, every project has its challenges and opportunities, right?
And NDAs.
Yeah, there you go. As your practice has evolved too, are you still doing houses?
Yes. I mean, we do, absolutely. And we've always had at least one, or if not more than one, residential project going on in the office at the time, oftentimes interiors as well. So residences in the broader sense, not necessarily detached houses, but yeah, we
Because
we
some
love
are in
those
New York
projects.
City. Yeah, some are in the city. And then
That's
some are
right.
freestanding houses.
Oh, cool. Now, in this age of HGTV and Instagram, how are the clients lately? Are they coming in with too many ideas in those initial meetings because they've watched too many hours of TV? Or are they more informed because of these shows? What do you think?
I think it's maybe a little bit of a balance, but in the best case scenario, I don't think we've had a client who's come in with too many ideas, actually, ever. And we're really fortunate in that regard because we do love working on houses. But people see things they like. And so sometimes it's really helpful because if you're having like a visual brainstorm or something like that, they might pull some images together and share them, not because they're saying, I want it to be exactly this, but as a means of communicating if they're not used to maybe how we start to draw and model things. So it's actually can be really constructive, and I think has been more helpful than not in our experience in the instances when that's happened.
One interesting house project that we did is a house on Martha's Vineyard. And that was interesting about that is we replaced a house that the clients had built about 30 years earlier. So it was interesting in terms of not necessarily having initial ideas, but them having experienced the site for such a long time. The house wasn't winterized and it had a crawl space, and there were reasons functionally why it was very small. They replaced it, but essentially the new house went in roughly the same position, although it's a totally different design. So that was kind of interesting in terms of just a client who had experienced the site, for decades before.
And had just suddenly decided that maybe they should winterize?
Well, they were going to be retiring there. And so it was to really take what had been a kind of a summer house, basically, for their young family. And now their kids are grown and they're going to retire there and whatnot. So that was the driving program.
They weren't freezing that whole time.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about these houses, you can be looking at their website, aro.net/tag/residential. You'll see the Colorado house, which was mentioned earlier, and you'll also see this Martha's Vineyard house. You all are very active in so many spaces, and you do a lot of teaching and speaking. So how do you balance all that out and still have a life? Here's a work-life balance question for you.
Well, that's such a good question, and we pride ourselves as having an office where everyone has a work-life balance, even if ours is sometimes tipsy. So trying to be organized, sometimes it gets out of hand, sometimes not. Adam and I, our kids are out of the house, so it's a little bit different than with Kim, whose son is still in high school. But, when you love what you do, you figure out how to find time to do it.
What makes it possible also is having great people to work with, not just that we get the joy of collaborating together on a daily basis, but that we have wonderful people in the office, which, that enables our absence occasionally, right? If we're traveling to speak or traveling to teach, and it also helps contribute to those ideas and conversations that we're trying to have here in the office and also share with other people, which is part of what was happening in the book too. So that's really what makes it possible.
How does a firm pull together a book like this of your own work? Do you just do it on the weekends, or do you hire somebody to put it together, or how does it come about?
All of the above.
It was a multi-year project. We had great collaborators in terms of advisors and editor and people who worked with us in the office as well, and amazing book designer. So it was a process of conversations probably started, 8 or more years ago, but the real work of the book was more intense for maybe the last 3 years up till the publication. But many, many people and a lot of discussions about the content, of course, and how to weave together the story of the office in a way which we think is more than the sum of its parts. It's not simply about creating the projects, but as the title implies, it's about the way that we work and the culture and of the firm itself and how we think about the firm as a project in itself.
Was it hard to narrow it down to 30 projects?
Yes.
Yes. The whole thing was really satisfying, but like a real amount of work. I mean, we saw it as an opportunity to be sort of self-reflective about what we do and why we do it. Hence the principles, which have always been there. Some of them were there from the beginning, and some of them grown over time as our view of what architecture is and what it can do has expanded. But that gave us an opportunity to really articulate it and put it in writing and say, this is what we care about. This is what we think is important.
And when you put together a book like this, do you guys have to buy 5,000 copies to put in your storeroom? I mean, how does it work? Because I know you want to have some to give potential clients, right?
Yeah, there's it depends, I think, on obviously any deal one strikes with a publisher, but the overall agreement involves purchase price and a certain amount that we're going to buy that we store that we will want to have for future use. And I can't remember how many. I think it's definitely less than 5,000 for our book. But
good. Okay.
We have a certain number that we have in storage.
Otherwise,
which is
5,000.
great.
I think it was 500. I think it's 500 that we have. Yeah, and I think the print run was something like 1,700, something like that.
Okay.
Total.
It's like a catalog.
There are no pallets of these in your garage someplace.
No, people need
otherwise
to hurry and buy their copy because these may run out.
Yes, scarcity.
Right.
There you go. Brings up the price.
Yeah.
And I assume this is available in all your, normal bookstore channels, right?
It
Yes,
is.
that's
It
correct.
is.
Yep.
We're expecting to retire on the profits from this book, so please go ahead and do it.
That's right, because publishing for architecture is so lucrative.
Right.
Exactly.
I have to say, though, I was thrilled because our neighborhood bookstore, 192 Books on 10th Avenue in Manhattan, is an art and architecture and sells fiction as well. And I saw our book on the shelf about a month ago, and it was in alphabetical order. So the book next to it was a Lina Bobardi monograph. And that was like a thrilling moment where I was like, oh, wow.
Well,
We're what a great adjacency.
right.
So
the
that
title
was-
starts with an
that was
A,
cool.
so it's right up front.
Right. It's like going on a
Exactly.
talk show and sitting next to Beyonce, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we were going to name architecture
It's
with
better.
3 A's, but we decided not to.
Like a plumber, Aardvark Plumbing.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
For the old phone books of people that go way back when there were phone books.
Yes. AAA locksmiths, those types of things. Yep, exactly.
The book is Architecture Research Office, available in your local bookstores. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Thank you very
Pleasure.
much, George.
Yep.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yeah.
We were speaking with Adam Yarinsky, Stephen Cassell, and Kim Yao of ARO. Architect Kevin Alter, a Harvard graduate and principal of Alter Studio, has edited 12 books, curated 16 exhibitions, and taught at Columbia,
Go Lions.
Catholic University,
Go Cardinals.
and Tulane.
Go Green Wave.
His design of a 12,000 square foot home in the Dallas Highland Park neighborhood was a winner in the 2021 Residential Architect Design Awards. And his 2017 book, titled Highland Park, explores that design in detail. Here's George's conversation with Kevin Alter.
Kevin, in Dallas, the Highland Park neighborhood is actually its own town, right?
It is it's incorporated. It's its own city. Yeah,
Yeah, like with a city council, the whole works.
it is. Yeah.
I understand it was designed by the same person that designed Beverly Hills.
I've heard that too, but I've only ever heard it as a rumor, so I don't know it for a fact. But I like it, so I don't want to find out anything other.
I believe that's true. I mean, Wikipedia says so it must be right. It must be.
Yeah, it must be.
And this is a very affluent neighborhood. There's a lot of French and Tudor mansions in it throughout. And there's a little body of water, a river or a creek or something, running through the middle.
It's a really beautiful part of the greater Dallas area. It tends to be kind of tony, that it's there are lots of areas that are kind of expensive and rarefied. And as a consequence, a lot of large houses that come in every variety of historical style, it seems.
And in looking around the neighborhood on Google, these houses are pretty large. A lot of them are 13,000, 15,000 square feet. But in comparison, you designed a smaller house there, only about 12,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's small on that block. It's small, and in fairness, there's a gallery associated with it too. And I think the house proper is just less than 9,000, but it's not exactly a baby, but it's smaller than a lot of them on that block.
So how did you meet your clients, the Pinnells, to start creating this house?
You know, they were a really fascinating couple and have really made art collecting and promoting art a full-time occupation. They are pretty sophisticated with respect to architecture and architects, and they had done a fair amount of research. According to them, they'd looked all over the country for an architect to work with when they decided to build a house. They had lived or had been living in an interesting modernist house almost across the street from this one, and had purchased the lot where the previous building had been torn down. And they went looking all over for architects. There were some local architects. There were some well-known folks from the West Coast that they were really interested in. And somehow we ended up on their list. And they came and, talked to us as well as other folks. And when they narrowed the list down to 3 firms, I believe, they had us do a little proposal. They paid us each a kind of nominal fee and had 3 firms do a proposal. And I guess they were most enchanted with what we were doing.
And this was when? Around 2016, 2017?
Yeah, gosh, I should have looked that up before we spoke. I can't exactly remember, but that rings true. I mean, it was a long time process. They had a perfectly lovely house to live in and were enjoying the kind of process of design and were as participatory as anybody that I've worked with. I think 2017 sounds about right. Yeah.
Does this house have a nickname? Because I know a lot of houses do.
Oh, it probably does, but not that I'm aware. I mean, I know the client enjoyed the various remarks people were making over the course of its construction time. I think there were folks that were fairly derisive and other folks that were just sort of intrigued with the idea of doing something so modern in that neighborhood.
Well, I have to say, I'm hard to impress sometimes, but this is an extraordinary house. Very beautiful. Like something you might see in France, maybe. It's an astonishing work of residence and gallery, very modern. I was wondering, did the neighbors rise up against it? Were there torches and pitchforks in the early stages to protest this new, wild thing going up in their Tudor neighborhood?
Not that I'm aware of. And it's not the only modern house there, but there were a few. I mean, there's a Paul Rudolph house, a very beautiful one, not so far away. So there is a great history of modernism in Dallas, but not in this immediate neighborhood. And I mean, it's one of the ironies about building in kind of the middle of cities is that they don't tend to have CCRs, codes, covenants, restrictions, the way that more contemporary developments do. And instead, they only have codes, and the codes tend to be style neutral, and they just have a series of regulations. Like it's pretty clear from the codes in Highland Park that they were really looking for a villa. Like I think in the book that was published on the building, we kind of gave some of the drawings because in this part of town, one can't kind of fence in or wall in the property. One has to put 50% of the mass of the building between sort of 2 lines that are sort of right in the middle of the property. And it's really set up for a villa with a great big lawn leading up to it. So it seems like the intentions of the folks that wrote the codes were to get buildings of that kind. And I don't want to say we subverted that, but we certainly followed all of the regulations, but tried to make a building that would have a different kind of presence.
It has a great presence. And when you look at it from the street, I was wondering, what is that little area where you've got those sort of slots? And then there's an open skylight or atrium from the roof.
Right. So I'll back up just slightly from that. So we work with a really lovely landscape architect, a man named David Hawker from Dallas, who the client had actually worked with previously. He was a real partner with these things in creating the landscape inside and outside the house, including that upper courtyard. So for us, it was really important to create this sense of a kind of levitating, fairly hermetic volume, this sort of limestone volume that cantilevers 34 feet at the entry and didn't have obvious penetrations. So the way that the pattern of the stone on the front is set up so that it's almost like a fabric that starts to pull apart. And then behind that is a courtyard. And behind the courtyard on the second floor are a series of rooms that open up to that. So all of the glazing and the things that would make the composition upstairs from the street look less abstract are pulled back behind the courtyard, like putting in a window. So the openings in that are just open to an open air courtyard. And obviously from the street, you're just looking up into to the sky beyond.
There's been a book on the house, right?
There is a publisher called Oro, ORO, has a series that flatteringly that they refer to as their masterpiece series. What's really, really lovely for, at least for us, is that they publish one building per book in this series. And the consequence of that is one gets to show a building in great detail, both detailed drawings, but also essays that go into some depth about the building and a lot of photographs and a lot of drawings, so that the richness and the thoughtfulness that the architects put into their buildings is explained through the book. I mean, one of my great loves in architecture is subtlety and nuance. And those are the kind of things that often get lost in a brief publication. One sees kind of larger gestures, but not the more subtle ones. And one of my great loves about modern architecture is the way in which subtlety can make such a dramatic difference in the experience of a building. So the book was a lovely opportunity for us to share this building in a way that tries to capture more of what's interesting about it than just its overall shape.
It is unusual for a house to have its own book, and this house has certainly gained some international acclaim. It's been published in several magazines in many countries.
It has, and it's lovely for us that it's managed to win a bunch of awards and been published in different places. So we're flattered by that and appreciative, but the book allowed for an opportunity to show it in a little more detail than it's often shown, especially because we put so much effort into every building we do and so much thought that it's nice to have images that are showing, not just the most important spaces, but the other ones that are equally interesting, but maybe more secondary, for example.
Since the house was completed in 2018, has this led to other similar commissions?
It's always very hard to tell with houses, because I feel like why people come to us is unclear, if they've seen the work or a friend that they spoke to. So we certainly are working on other really interesting commissions. I'm not sure they led directly from this, but it's something we're really interested in. I mean, one of the things that was so extraordinary about working with the Pinnells was they have a significant art collection, and to be able to have the architecture work with that collection to highlight it in ways that would make the art more present and more interesting, but not just sort of overwhelm it, was a real pleasure. And so we are actively interested in and trying to pursue doing more work of that kind. There is one version of working with art that is more, I don't know, shall we say, dialogical, like the way Frank Gehry describes working with Richard Serra, where the bold gestures of Richard Serra in Bilbao, it's a Guggenheim Bilbao building, where the kind of bold gestures of the sculpture are somehow echoed, I think he would say danced with, in the bold gestures of the architecture. And I'm not personally that interested in doing that kind of, or working with art in that way. And in part, when we work on these things, no particular piece of art is permanently set up in one spot. But I was more interested in imagining the building to be more like a primed canvas for the art to show itself off in its most interesting lights. And by that, I mean, like in the way an artist, a painter will paint a canvas white. I think they call that priming it, to sort of set it up so that the gestures on the canvas are displayed in a way that are exposed in a way that is more compelling. We see designing spaces with art in that way, where the architecture doesn't exactly take a backseat. It is involved with how one experiences the art, but it doesn't become the focus.
Well, certainly this is a great house, both for living and collecting and curating art. Are there any other kinds of, I hate to call it a hobby, but sort of collections that people have that you can customize a house around? Like, have you ever done a house for sculpture, for instance?
That's one of the things that's so interesting about working on houses from my perspective, is that on the one hand, people care about them a lot. On the other hand, clients we've worked with are all really interesting, and they often have really interesting things. Sometimes they have beautiful furniture that they care about. Sometimes we're doing something for someone that has an incredible collection of local posters from the whole history of a certain music festival in Austin. And these are meaningful to them. And it's really lovely to build something that can show this collection off in a way that they will enjoy and that visitors enjoy as well. So almost everybody we've worked for has some kind of collection. sometimes that's in our collection, but other times that's just things that are meaningful to them. I am yet to do any building where like nothing comes along with it, where like all the furniture is purchased new, all the art just for the house. And in a way, that might be an interesting exercise, but I love working with people's things. And in a way, I was going to say, I feel like I hope you can always tell our work is our work. I hope it's all done with a level of expertise and thoughtfulness. But I think the work all looks quite different. And my hope is or my belief is that arises because we're working with the things and the individuals who are commissioning us.
This house is really quite unusual for the neighborhood. I imagine that your owners there, the Pinnells, see a lot of people like pull up slowly in their cars and take a picture of it on their iPhones.
I think there's a fair amount of that. In this city, one isn't allowed to put a construction sign up to say who did it or, anything like that. So I think there was an awful lot of speculation during the period of construction for this building of like, who's building this? Like, who's the architect? What's going on here? And I think that curiosity has continued. It is, in a funny way, discreet. I mean, I don't mean that it blends into all the other architectural styles, but in fact, even the landscaping is quite unusual, with this sort of riprap kind of mound that we put at the front with the flowers and trees and things growing out of it. But it's a building that one doesn't kind of ever see in a singular image. There's no place you can stand back from and get a sense of the whole building because there's this landscape, the stuff that's happening in front of it, and you get glimpses. It's certainly not demure, but it is something that one has to kind of stitch together the images in a funny way. Like there's a parable about the blind men and the elephant. It's a kind of ancient parable where trying to understand the form of something larger than one person can feel, and they have to kind of combine it by stitching all of their subjective understandings of it together. Someone's feeling the leg, someone's feeling the nose or something like that. And
I think that's an Aesop's fable. It sounds like one of those.
It could be. Yes, it could be. But I think it's often used for emphasizing the subjectivity of individuals. But I was just thinking of it now because one of the things that I really like about the way the building is disposed on its property and in one's experience is that there isn't a place where one can stand back and kind of see it. So to understand the building, one has to stitch together a whole series of intimate experiences with it as you enter under this big cantilever, as you see through the building or wander into the gallery or something like that all these things get stitched together into a individual understanding of it. And I guess I started talking about it that way because you were saying, like, do people drive by and kind of gawk or take photos? And I think it's a little bit like they drive by and they might back up. It's like, wait, something was a little bit.
Hey, what was that?
Yeah. Rather than.
Holy cow.
Exactly. And I prefer that version. I prefer that version of something that it's, scale wise, it fits in very nicely. It's certainly not outrageous in a way that you kind of sense there's something very weird happening here, but it's a little more haunted, or haunting, like you drive by and maybe you back up and take another look. But when Freud talks about the quality of things that are haunting, he doesn't refer to something that's haunting as like a monster. Instead, he refers to like a little girl with the voice of an 80-year-old man. Like something's not right here, and it makes you think about what's going on. And in a way, like that's the most interesting thing about art to me. It's like I love beautiful things, but the most interesting books I've read or art that I've seen or experienced or buildings that I've experienced have been the ones that have made me think a little bit longer about what was going on in the world and how did that change my perception of it.
Well, let's close with a quote. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Does that have any special meaning for you?
It does, in a funny way. The Beatles line that my quote from my senior high school yearbook, if I remember correctly. Did you dig that?
That's correct. We found it.
Wow. You are a scary person to know that you can kind of find things that are that obscure. I was hoping that one might die into the into the obscure, the pre-digital age.
Definitely, this house is one of your moments to arise. Congratulations on such a wonderful work.
Thank you so much. And I have always a concern with the way that architecture is attributed, often to like the named partner, like in my case, my name. But I actually have two equal partners, and they used to be my students. They are partners now, and they are every bit as responsible for this as I am. Tim Whitehill and Ernesto Cargnolino. I don't want to propose that somehow this is my building and I did everything about it, because we all worked on it and they have authorship responsibility too.
All right. Well, Tim and Ernesto, you are on the official list.
Excellent. Thank you.
Kevin, thanks so much for talking with me.
It's my pleasure entirely.
Joining us today in the studio, Carrie Marshall is an accomplished classically trained pianist and songwriter of hundreds of tunes. She can really sing just about anything: jazz, blues, gospel, country, and her specialty, pop with a jazz treatment. Think Diana Krall meets Carole King. Carrie moved to North Carolina in 2008, and by 2010 she had won Charlotte's Top Vocalist and the North Carolina Co-op Singer-Songwriter of the Year for the original song Queen City. With 5 albums, she's also an actress, appearing in inspirational movies such as War Room and Changeover.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the podcast, Carrie.
Hey, Carrie, you're a preacher's kid, and your mom was the choir director. So tell me about growing up. Did you take the angel route, or were you the rebel?
I was the firstborn people pleaser angel kid, yes, much to my sister's chagrin.
Was she the rebel?
Yes, I have 2 sisters, and they were both rebels. One was an out-and-out rebel, and one was the stealthy, quiet rebel.
Ah,
yeah.
The spy rebel.
Yeah.
And what kind of trouble did they get you into or keep you away from?
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm, again, the oldest, and there was a 5-year gap between my middle sister and then a 7-year gap between the youngest. But my middle sister, people thought we were twins. So she would steal my ID all the time and go clubbing and, so, So I would go, I'd be out looking for my ID and be like, where is it? Oh, my God, So, yeah, there's lots of stories there.
Yeah. So when did you start singing?
I started singing as a child because my mother was a choir director. She used to do a children's choir. So, again, I did what my parents said. Mm-hmm. So as a kid, I sang. I hit middle school and I stopped because that's what my mom did. That was my little quiet rebellion. My mother sang, so I did not want to sing. And I was classically trained all through that. And my father, part of my musical education was from an early age, from age 8 on, I had to play for church. And I used to think I was going to die because I was so scared as a kid getting up in front of everybody. And so I was playing Bach and Mozart for the church services by the time I was 9. And now I'm grateful for that because it really did train me down the road. But I never thought of myself really as a singer until high school. Some friends were doing it in musicals, and I was like, I think I really want to do that. And so I dove into musical theater, really loved it, but still thought of myself as a piano player first for many, many years until I kept getting more feedback about my voice. My playing was like, okay, but people really love my voice. And again, I found a lot of freedom of expression there.
So pop music wasn't forbidden in the church, I assume?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Oh, it was?
For me, it was, yes. It was a conservative church, and I was not even allowed to listen to it. I was allowed to listen to classical only, only classical and only church music. And again, my sisters listened to everything. I was a rule follower. I had a lot of education as I got into high school, and I started being exposed to stuff because my parents couldn't control everything. And I started going, there's a whole world out here I had no idea about. And so, it's been a lot of backtracking and learning stuff after the fact.
So when was your entry into Satan's jukebox?
Well, the slippery slope started in the 80s. Yes.
And who affected you first? Who did you resonate with first?
Oh, gosh. Well, see, again, my Christian background, Amy Grant was the one, and of course she was...
She was a crossover artist.
She was a crossover, and lots of people... She was very controversial back in the day, too. Who would have thought?
Yeah, really.
But she influenced me.
Amy Grant says, damn, headline at 11.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, I think I'm having some trauma, PTSD right now. You've been talking about this. So, but then early, I loved, in fact, I started songwriting because I heard a song by, you remember Tiffany and Debbie Gibson?
Oh, yeah. Sang in shopping malls and things, right?
Yeah. So I heard some of those songs and I was like, I can do that. I'm like, I can write a song like that. So I started writing songs like my senior year of high school. Mm-hmm. And my friends were like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And to me, I was kind of like, well, whatever. And then I hit college and then I started doing that more. Again, early influences. And then I really liked the 80s bands like Toto, Boston.
Kansas.
Yes.
All those things named after cities.
Yes. Exactly.
Chicago.
Exactly. So, and I really didn't discover jazz, honestly. I mean, I knew the music from musicals, but I used to think it was this upper echelon that I could not reach. And so I didn't even try. And it wasn't until I had done a stint in Nashville trying to make it as a songwriter, and they kept telling me, again, the feedback I got was, well, we like your songs, but we love your voice.
Yeah.
And my writing, they kept telling me was, they're like, dumb it down. Don't have such complicated harmonic structures, and don't have too sophisticated lyrics. And then when I moved to North Carolina in 2008, I met some jazz players and they're like, hey, join us on a gig. And that's when I was like, this is it. This is home. And so I started writing to match the genre, and then I won early on. Moving to North Carolina is when I won that award, Singer-Songwriter of the Year, for my very first jazz song called Queen City. I hadn't written anything else except that. And then buzz started getting around Charlotte like, new jazz singer. And I was like, oh my gosh. So that's kind of what kickstarted all of it for me.
This first song was written in 1944 by Les Brown, Ben Homer, and Bud Green. Les Brown and his band of renown, with a vocalist, Doris Day, took it to number 1 in 1945. Coinciding with the end of World War II in Europe, it became a homecoming theme for returning soldiers. Here's Carrie with Sentimental Journey.
Gonna take a sentimental journey. Gonna set my heart at ease. Gonna make a sentimental journey to renew old memories. Got my bags, got my reservations. Spent each dime I could afford. Like a child in wild anticipation, I long to hear that all aboard. 7, that's the time we leave at 7. I'll be waiting up in heaven, counting every mile of railroad track that takes me back. Never thought my heart could be so yearning. Why did I decide to roam? Gonna take a sentimental journey home. I'll be waiting up in heaven, counting every mile of railroad track that takes me back. Never thought my heart could be so yearning. Why did I decide to roam? Gonna take a sentimental journey home. Sentimental journey home. Sentimental journey home. I'm going home. I'm going home. Going home.
You know, my favorite part of that is the woo, woo, woo part.
Oh, really?
It really gets me. It's like, it's that whole kind of 40s sound,
Yes.
right?
Yes. That was my producer's idea, Jim Brock. He's based out of Charlotte. He's a fantastic drummer, renowned drummer, and he's a master at mixing. And so he was like, "Hey, try this," and I loved it too, because yes, it
It sounds like you got your hair done up for that, 40 style.
Yes, yes.
Get you in the
A lot
mood.
of hairspray involved.
Oh yes, yeah. I need a professional to help me with all that. I can't recreate that by myself. But even for that album, I did my photo shoot at the North Carolina Museum of Transportation. So they have
in Salisbury.
Yes, they have all those wonderful old trains and cars and planes there. It was really fun.
Oh, that's cool.
That is a great place to visit.
Oh, I love it there.
And
I
they
love
still
it.
have that train ride they can take you on too, right around the yard or something.
I think so. Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been
Yeah.
back there. And again, you can hear the elements. So I wanted it to sound like a train when we were singing it, and you can hear those elements musically in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Those wheels grinding and the whistles blowing and all of that. Fantastic. So you've experimented and sung all these different genres.
Yes.
Including taking some of these pop songs and making them more jazzy. How do you go about doing that? How do you jazz up a pop song?
Well, I just sit down. It's like a playground, and so I'm drawing from my elements as a songwriter, and that kind of started to happen. I kind of sometimes call it jazz for the layperson. So people who come to my shows, I have jazz aficionados and then people who've never been exposed to jazz. And because I came also late to the genre, I find that I'm just kind of a great entry for people who have never heard it before. So that's kind of what first started it. I was like, well, what if I took a song from the 80s, 90s, whatever, and just, I call it, jazzified it. So I just sit down and play. I'm like, knowing the different harmonic structures and the patterns that you follow. And so, for example, like Girls Just Want to Have Fun, I was like, what if that was a bossa? And then I just played with it, and it was just came instantly.
It's the rhythm that you're working with.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because melody, and then you can just play around the melody if you want to, but that's what people resonate with. And then it became kind of at first it started as a fun little trick. Like I would be doing a show and then I'd throw a song in there and be like, people would know the lyrics and they'd be like, wait a minute, what is this? And then I'd hit the chorus and then they'd be like, oh.
Now I know.
I know this.
Yes,
I know this.
Yes. And so now I've based a whole show around it. I call it Twist of Jazz. And it's really resonating with audiences because it's just a fresh take on songs that we know. And again, for me, it's interesting musically because I can play around a little bit more. My last show, I haven't recorded this one yet, but we did Bruce Springsteen's Dancing in the Dark as a tango.
Oh, nice.
So I turned it into a minor key. And then I sing it, and honestly, the lyrics, you don't even change the lyrics, and you hear a menopausal woman singing it. You're like, oh my gosh, it totally fits.
I got to hear that.
I know. So it's on my bucket list. I need to record that this year. And then my husband, Estes Starber, who's an actor, I brought him in to do a duet, and then we kick it back into the major key when he comes in. So we still give homage to the boss, the traditional way the song was done. But for my part, it was really fun to turn it into a tango.
And he doesn't pull you out of the audience and dance with
No,
you.
it's
like in the video, right?
But I guess in the video we could do that. It's kind of hard to do live unless
right.
I'm playing
Right.
with one hand.
Yeah, right. I'm busy.
Exactly.
And since you grew up, did your parents come around to this new music, or were they like the church lady and going, well, isn't that special?
Yeah. They totally came around. They are huge fans now.
Great.
Yes. I kind of, I took the long route, but I started to realize I can do this because I like to do it.
Yeah.
Again, that was a journey in my early adult life.
Every adult life early, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, some people learn it earlier than others. But
Tell me about this next song, Red Rose.
Red Rose is one I wrote early on. And when I'm writing music, I really compare it to painting a picture. And so I see colors when I'm writing songs, and I know a certain mood that I want to evoke. And so that song was spawned from, I literally had a vase of red roses, and they were beautiful. They lasted 2 weeks, but toward the end of its lifespan, it started to, darken and deepen and peel. And so I was like, oh, it just made me think of love starting to go sour. And so I just kind of started playing with it, and that's what came
And
out.
love grows old and waxes cold and fades away like morning dew.
There you go.
Here's Carrie with Red Rose.
all night under the light of the moon. You drew me close, gave me a red, red rose with its heady perfume. Fragrantly sweet, this perfume completely reminds me of you. Velvety soft and smooth to the touch, but you got thorns too. Red rose, yeah, pull me in. Red rose, only to pierce me again like a red, red rose. But when you're over there pretending like you still care, I just gotta be near you. Witty and funny, sweeter than honey in a honeycomb. Tenderly charming, beautifully beguiling, baby, I know you're like a red rose, yeah, pull me in. Red rose, only to pierce me again like a red, red rose. Darling, you disconcert me. So honey, if you desert me, remember my heart is gonna bleed for you. Every drop the color of a red rose, you pull me in. Only to pierce me again like a red, red rose. Yeah. Da 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 da. Darling, you pierced me. Pierce me again, just like a red, red rose, a red, red rose.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Wow.
Thank you.
Very slinky.
Yes, it's fun.
Carrie, thanks for joining us. You can find more about Carrie Marshall at carriemarshall.net. That's CarrieMarshall.net. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by June Goldfinger and Jeff Taylor, sponsors of Circle, Square, Triangle, a traveling exhibition on the architecture of Myron Goldfinger. And by Diane Bald and the Budman family, restoring significant architecture in Toronto, Los Angeles, Malibu, and Palm Springs. Okay, Tom, take us out.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 23,000 significant modernist houses, and access 4.5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl, with guest research by Bobby Morris. Passionate is her middle name. Or it could be Pearl. It's an abiding mystery. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive Incorporated, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another Mr. Cranky Pants edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.